Well, hi everyone. Like I said, my name is Kunle Vicar of St. Michael's Highgate, and I'm going to be talking today about on the answering this question: is it okay to have money as a Christian? Is it okay to have money as a Christian? And I'd want to tackle this in a few ways. So I'm going to be, over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to be touching on a few things, maybe 6 categories, if you will. Why it's okay to talk about money. That's the first one. Why it's okay to talk about money. The danger of money. The right attitude to money. A good steward. How we should use our money. And finally, I have a short case study to share, just so everybody can see what I'm talking about, what I think I'm talking about in practice. So 6 different subheadings that help us answer the question, is it okay for us Christians to have money? And so the first thing I wanted to look at is why it's okay to talk about money. I know lots of churches, as many of us as Christians, we are quite reticent about talking about money. We can talk about lots of different things, but when it comes to money, we're quite reserved and we don't really want to talk about it. At least I find that's my experience in the Church of England. But it's not a topic that we should shy away from. There's nothing that's taboo about talking about money. A lot of us think maybe it's unspiritual to talk about. Think maybe money is earthly and not spiritual. We look at money maybe as a secular thing. We talk about money banks and how people use money. We think more about a secular thing in the church. We think maybe we are supposed to be more spiritual. So we're quite reluctant and very shy and timid to talk about talking about money. Whereas the Bible isn't very silent. The Bible says a lot about money. Jesus Christ has a lot to say about money. So we all should feel free, be open about talking about money. The truth is, Jesus says more about money than he does about heaven and hell. And the Bible also talks a lot about money. You find that the Bible has more verses about money than it has about faith and prayer combined. So these are things that tell us why we should be talking about money and why it's important. The Bible and Jesus Christ thinks the Bible and Jesus Christ, they both show us that it's important to talk about money. And so we're going to be looking at that today. So what do we do? Why is it we have this discomfort? Some might say we look at some of the verses in the Bible and they point us to some difficulties, if you will, about money. One of the verses I look at is Jesus Christ saying it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. That's Matthew 19. It's easier, 23, 24. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. Jesus also says that no one can serve 2 masters. Says either you will hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. So again, you can see why a lot of us are quite reluctant to talk about money, because we feel maybe Jesus Christ says, no, you know what? Don't have anything to do with money, because if you're rich, you won't go to heaven. Or if you're rich, you're serving mammon and not God. And is that what Jesus Christ is saying? Is he saying that if we have money, then we are on the sure road to hell? Is he saying that if we have money, then we have abandoned God and we have succumbed to mammon? The Bible doesn't quite say that. In the Bible, we find that lots of people who are chosen by God, who are approved by God, or approved of by God, were quite wealthy. The patriarchs were all wealthy. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we know when we read through the accounts in the Old Testament that they were quite wealthy. We look at King David and King Solomon as well, who were quite wealthy. So it's not about how wealthy we are. The Bible isn't saying that we shouldn't be wealthy. I don't think the Bible is saying that at all. And we can find that evidence through all these scriptures. We find that in Job as well, about how God Job was quite a prosperous man. And after he'd gone through all his trials and tribulations, God blessed him with even more than he had before. So again, God blesses him with more money. And one of the things the Bible teaches us also, it's that it is God who blesses us with money. God it is who blesses us with money. Bible Deuteronomy chapter 8 verses 17 and 18 says, "But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms his covenant, which is swore to your ancestors as it is today." That's Moses speaking to the people of Israel. It is God who gives you the ability to produce wealth. We read in Psalm 112, verses 1 to 3. "Blessed are those who fear the Lord, who find great delight in his commands. Their children will be mighty in the land. The generation of the upright will be blessed. Wealth and riches are in their houses, and their righteousness endures forever." Again, we're hearing this. Wealth and riches are in their houses, and their righteousness endures forever. So we know that it's all right to talk about money. We know that the Bible, Jesus Christ, does not say we shouldn't have money. The Bible doesn't say we shouldn't aspire to have money. So then if that's the case, then we need to look at what the Bible is saying, because it's quite clear that the Bible is quite clear that about the implications, the dangers, if you will, of having money. The dangers of having money. So that's the next thing I want to look at. The danger of having money. One of the things we know is this, that Jesus Christ is, when he talks about having money, when he talks about wealth, he tries to tell us that there's a correlation, if you will. There's a relationship between our spiritual condition on the one hand and our attitude to money on the other. Money exposes what's in our hearts. Money reveals who we really are. So the right attitude to money is one that's God-centered, one that doesn't cause us to jettison our relationship. So what are the dangers of having money? Because if we're going to still ask ourselves, is it okay to have money as a Christian? We need to be aware of the pitfalls of having money. One of the things we know is that money can make us think we don't need God. We can be filled with pride when we're well off, when we're affluent, when we're rich. The Bible says again, Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 17, Moses is saying to the nation of Israel, as they are about to enter the promised land, he says to them, be careful, because you might say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. And when you do that, you're relegating God into the background. So be careful. Don't ever think, you know what, all I have, I've worked for. This is my doing. This is me. This is the result of all my hard work. When you do that, you're already relegating God into the background. You're saying it's all about you. Another danger we have is that money can become an idol, because it's easy for money to replace God, take the place of God in our hearts. It can really become an idol. And we've got to be very careful about that, because that's idolatry. And the Bible over and over and over again warns us about the dangers of idolatry. Paul, in writing to Timothy, says, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. The love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. A lot of times, and I think we find that many people don't really, when they quote this verse, they say money is a root to all kinds of evil. But the full quotation says the love of money is a root to all kinds of evil. Again, Paul is warning us. Paul is telling us this. Look, be careful. Be careful about money. Be careful so you don't love money above all else. And it's easy for us to enter into that pitfall, because we can buy all kinds of things. We can enter this materialistic worldview We can afford lots of things when we have money. So it's easy for us to fall in love with money and all it can do for us. And then when we love money, we kind of find that, again, we've relegated God into the background. Another danger of money is that it can cause us to be discontent. We find out that we are always aspiring about money. We're always aspiring for more and more and more money. We're never quite content with what we have. So we're looking for more. We have this and we think, oh, I could have more. We have more and we think, I could have more still. And we're going back and we're going on and on and on and never quite content, never been in that place of contentment. And again, Paul, in writing to Timothy, says, some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. They've wandered away from the faith in this quest for money, and they've pierced themselves with many griefs. Again, this is another danger of money. And one of the other things that's quite obvious is money can cause us to have a breakdown in our relationships with others. It's a sad fact of life, but we find so often that when people because of money quarrel, they break, they end up fighting, squabbling over money. We've had, I'm sure we also have had stories of friends or maybe even members of families, same siblings, if you will, who contest the will of their parents, and because of that, fight and their relationships breaks down over money. And again, that's a danger. We've got to be careful about things like that. James says in his writing, chapter 4, verses 1 to 3, what causes fights and quarrels among you? You covet, or you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. You covet because you cannot get what you want. And that's, again, a sign, or that's one of the things that can happen to us when we're really in pursuit of money above all else. So there's some dangers, some pitfalls we need to be aware of when we're looking at money. And then the next thing I want to look at is, what's our attitude, the right attitude we should have to money? What's the right attitude we should have to money? And the first thing we have to look at, first thing we need to note is that, or the first attitude we need to have is this: all that we have comes from God. All that we have comes from God. If we look at it, it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to God. And God just entrusts it to us as stewards. God says, hey, look after this for me. It's not ours. It belongs to God. David says in 1 Chronicles 29, verses 13 to 14, everything comes from you, and we have only given you what comes from your hand. Everything comes from you, and we've only given you what comes from your hand. And again, when we look at the prophet Haggai, God says through prophet Haggai, the silver is mine and the gold also is mine. So all that we have comes from God. That's the first correct attitude we should have towards money. If we're going to aspire towards money, we should think, Lord, God blesses us with money. It's God's money. And we're only caretakers. We're only stewards of all that He's blessed us with. So why does God bless us with money? Why does God entrust us with money? Answer to that is, God blesses us with money so we can be rich towards Him. He's not blessing us with money so we can have this flamboyant lifestyle, have huge bank balances and just do what we like. No, He blesses us with money so we can be rich towards Him, so we can use this money to advance the cause of His kingdom. We've got to think about money like that. God gives us His money so we can use it to advance the cause of His kingdom. And we see when in the parable that Jesus told about the rich fool, Jesus calls him the rich. It's a parable of the rich fool, the man whose harvest was plentiful, had all the money in the world, and he says to himself, you know what, I've got all the money I need. I don't need to do anything else. You know what, I'm just going to build more barns and store everything, and then I'm just going to live a carefree life, enjoy, do what I want. And what does Jesus Christ say? What does God say to him? God says to him, you fool. This very night, your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you've prepared for yourself? This is how it will be for whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. So God calls this rich man a fool because he didn't have the right attitude to money. So we must always know that we have to be rich towards God. And that means spending our money on kingdom priorities. So let's look, if God is entrusting money to us as stewards, then let's look at what the qualities of a good steward are. What are the qualities of a good steward? The first one is faithfulness. God expects us to be faithful with all He's entrusted to us. Faithfulness. Paul says in his letter to the Corinthians, now it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. It is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. And God says of Moses, servant above all else, a great servant of God, He says of Moses, he's faithful in all my house. This is Numbers 12, chapter 12, verse 7. He's faithful in all my house. So let's always think about that. We need to be faithful. God gives us this money, and we have to be faithful. We have to give account. We have to give an account of all that God has entrusted to us on the day of judgment. God is going to ask us, what have you done? What did you do with the money I entrusted to you? And we have to be faithful to be able to give Him proper account of what He's given us. And the next thing also, another quality is wisdom. We need to be wise stewards. God expects us to use wisdom, discretion, and imagination in the way we apply the money He has entrusted to us. And we find this in Luke 16, when Jesus Christ talks about the parable of the shrewd manager, who was commended for being shrewd. So those are things we need to have as stewards: wisdom and faithfulness. So how should we use our money? We've already found that it's true. It's all right to have money. There's nothing wrong with money. There's nothing wrong with having money. It's okay for us Christians to have money. How should we use our money? As vicar of a church here in London, I know we can't do anything without the ministry and mission of our church is dependent on the money we get from the members of the congregation, people who give us money. We need to support our mission partners. We need to run our services. We run a wellness cafe where people can come in, so we can have something to eat. These are all things that we need to do as Christians. We need to meet the needs of others. So as Christians, we need to be saying to ourselves, how can we support the work and mission of God in our world? What are the things we can be doing to help others? There are people starving in our society. There are people who are homeless. Some are recovering from the effects of alcohol abuse and drug abuse. People are lonely. Some are refugees. They're victims of war. People need to hear the word of God. But we need to do all the. So what as Christians we should be doing is finding how we use our money to meet these needs. The things that Jesus Christ has spoken about. How can we meet all these needs? How can we make a difference? We need to be thinking. We need to be thinking how we can make a difference with the money we have. The money isn't just for us to put away in a bank. Yes, we have to meet our own needs. We say we pray, give us this day our daily bread. We meet our daily bread. God helps us meet our own needs. But what's left over? What we need to do is think, you know what? I'm going to give some of this to God's work. I'm going to give some of this so I can make a difference in my society, in the lives of others. So that's what we need to be thinking about when we think how we're spending our money. Where are the needs? Where are the needs in our society? Where are the needs of the kingdom? And how can I, Christian, meet those needs with my money? That's why we need to have money. And finally, I just want to end. See, I'm almost at the end. I only have about a minute or two left. I want to talk about, as a case study, to just tell you about a charity that I, as vicar of Highgate, have a privilege of being chair of, being a part of, a trustee of. It's called the Lady Gould Charity. It's a charity that's been running in Highgate. It's a local charity that's been running in Highgate for over 300 years. The Lady Gould Charity was set up by a Lady Gould, like I said, over 300 years ago, or was, well, set up after her death. Because what she did all those years ago was give all our estate, entrust our estate to the local vicar at that time, and said that the proceeds from that estate should be used for the poor of Highgate. The poor of Highgate. That's all she did. A Christian woman. She died. She had no offspring, so she gave all her money and trusted it to the local vicar and said, use this money in perpetuity for the poor of Highgate. I don't know how many vicars have been since that time. Loads, I'm sure, over 300 years. And I'm now in line. And what we do since my time here is, because what she did is she's got some property in Highgate that are let commercial property, and the proceeds, the income from that, from those properties, are given away in support of what she wanted to the poor of Highgate. And since I've been here, we give away about 50,000, 60,000 pounds every year, and we've been doing that diligently, religiously every year since I've been here, and that's been going on before I even got here in Highgate. And the reality is this has gone on for over 300 years. Can you imagine that? 300 years. One woman had a vision of what she would do with her money, the money that God entrusted to her. The money that God said, this is your money, use it. I entrust it to you, be a caretaker for it, be a steward for it. And she's used it and still using it 300 years after her death. People are still benefiting from that money. People are still benefiting from that money, from this good woman's goodness, Lady Gould's goodness. And that's what I think all of us should aspire to how all of us should aspire to spend our money. How are we spending our money? Can we maybe think about that? Look at what Lady Gould is doing, being inspired by the example of this woman who gave all that she had and trusted it in care, in perpetuity. What she, in essence, she did is gave money to the poor. And when I came on, I looked at it as my responsibility as vicar, because she said, look, it's as if she gave that money, put that money into my own hands and said, no, make sure this money is used to care for the poor of Highgate. And that's how seriously I take the responsibility as one of the trustees of this charity. And I think that is something that we should all be looking at. How can we use the money that we have to make a difference? How can we use the money that we have to meet the needs of others? So if we circle back to the beginning and again, is it okay to have money as a Christian? The answer is yes, it is. It's okay to have money as a Christian. But it's important that we use the money that God has entrusted to us to the God's glory, to meet the needs of the kingdom. And if we do that, God will reward us, and God will probably we'll hear God say to us, as we're describing us as good servants, enter into my rest. You good and faithful servants, enter into my rest. Well, thank you very much. I hope this has been of value, and I appreciate you spending the time with me this afternoon.